As a delivery driver, when I see a crappy tip, I think two things. One part of me bemoans the fact that I have to take this garbage order and laments the loss of time and income that will result from it.
And what the other part of him think?
What her head would look like on a stick.
When the credits roll on American Psycho, audiences will often be left with a simple question. What the hell did I just watch? For the majority of the runtime of the film, we bear witness to the gleeful slaughter of person after person at the hands of the titular psycho, Patrick Bateman. We watch as his depravity escalates and his sanity deteriorates in much the same pattern. The plot intensifies until it reaches a fever pitch, and then, nothing. The rug is pulled out from under us at the last minute. There's no final standoff, no justice for the atrocities that we have just been shown. There is no justice because there was never a crime. Mr. Bateman couldn't have killed Paul Allen. Harold Carnes had dinner with him a couple weeks ago. Mr. Allen is alive and well.
Hey, Paul!
This revelation calls into question everything that the audience just witnessed and then abruptly ends the film, leaving us to stew in our uncertainty. So what really happened in American Psycho? What is the story that was being told? From my perspective, there are three ways that we can view this narrative: the reliable narrator, the semi-reliable narrator, and the unreliable narrator. The reliable narrator is the easiest of the three to parse. Using this framework, we simply take everything that happened in the film as literal truth. Mr. Bateman killed 20 to 40 people and got away with it. Even in scenarios where he absolutely should have been apprehended, he was not. No one in the apartment heard or cared about the sounds of a screaming woman or the revving of a chainsaw outside their doors. The realtor cleaned up the grisly trophies that she found in Paul Allen's apartment and said nothing to authorities. Mr. Bateman blew up a police car with a handgun. These things happened as they were shown to have happened, and that is that. The residents of the apartment just ignored the sound of the chainsaw because they're nothing more than self-absorbed socialites. The realtor discreetly disposed of the corpse rather than having her reputation tarnished, or, even worse, losing her listing. This theory would be viable, but for the chase sequence towards the end of the film. This portion of the film is simply a bridge too far to allow a literal interpretation of the events on screen. As far as I know, automated transaction machines do not consume feline flesh, and a handgun cannot make a car explode. There are other scenes earlier in the film that certainly strain credulity, but this sequence essentially cements the fact that we are not dealing with a reliable narrator. This leads us into the next framework of analysis, the semi-reliable narrator. In this paradigm, Patrick Bateman is still a serial killer, but simply not as prolific of a serial killer as we are led to believe. He, in fact, did not kill Paul Allen, but likely slew the homeless person. There were likely some acts of violence perpetrated against sex workers, but these acts were less grandiose than the game of chainsaw gravity darts we witnessed on screen. Through this lens, we are watching a serial killer in the early stages of development. He is engaging in acts of violence, but acts of violence in which the chances of being caught are very low. The more mundane murders actually occurred, while the more extravagant executions are nothing more than fantasies. The aspirations of an Ed Kemper wannabe that only exist in the mind of Mr. Bateman. For the record, the director of the film, Mary Herron, intended the audience to walk away from it with some variation of these two frameworks. In hindsight, she feels as if the way the film ended was too ambiguous and laments the fact that audiences came away with a less than literal interpretation. Less than literal is the perfect way to describe the final framework by which to view American Psycho, the unreliable narrator. Using this method of analysis, none of the horrendous things that transpired on screen actually happened, but rather, all along we were simply viewing the depraved imaginings of a mentally unwell yuppie. What's nice about movies like this is that all of these interpretations can be correct in a way. That is to say, that with each new way of watching the film, the audience gets what essentially amounts to a new movie, kind of like this picture. Is it one Wolverine or two Batmen kissing? The world may never know. With the reliable narrator, we essentially get a slasher movie with a dash of social commentary. Texas Chainsaw meets The Wolf of Wall Street, if you will. This is a perfectly acceptable and enjoyable way to watch American Psycho, as is the semi-reliable narrator mode of viewing. Here, we get a story about a man on the precipice of madness, a story about a psychopath committing the dark deeds that he desires, and an introduction to the acts that will follow as a result of him evading punishment. But through the unreliable narrator, we get something entirely divorced from the violence that is shown on screen. We get the story of a miserable Nepo baby raging with all his might against the gilded cage in which he resides. The story of a man constantly striving to be the best across all metrics and constantly failing in this endeavor. The anger and resentment of this failure leads to dark thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and those notions take hold of this man, and we watch as these thoughts fester and grow like a stain upon his mind until he is no longer able to differentiate these imaginings from reality. Despite the way that he is portrayed on screen, despite the way he sees himself, Patrick Bateman is a sad, miserable loser. Such a loser, in fact, that almost every person with whom he interacts mistakes him for someone else. He is underwhelming in every sense of the word. He's not very good at his job. In fact, he's only as affluent as he is because his father practically owns the company. He feels nothing for his fiancée and cheats on her constantly. He doesn't do this because he believes that she is cheating on him, which she may or may not be, but because he is simply indifferent towards her. He can't get a table at Dorsia, and he has the worst business card out of everyone he knows. Patrick Bateman is the uncoolest person at the cool kids table. He is at the table, therefore he is a cool kid. But he is cool in title only. Even still, he looks down his nose at the band geeks over in the corner. When he talks about the disgust that he feels for the rest of humanity, the band geeks in the previous analogy, he is really talking about the disgust that he feels for himself, even if his narcissism will never allow him to realize this. Mr. Bateman attempts to compensate for his shortcomings with a robust skincare routine and a workout regimen, with lavish trappings and popular opinions, but these efforts are ultimately futile. Despite his best efforts, he is seen as less than by all of those around him. This makes him furious, and that fury allows dark thoughts to intrude upon his mind. Dark thoughts where he is in control of everything. A fantasy where he is in the most prestigious position imaginable, the arbiter of life and death. And we watch as this fantasy that he has created for himself seeps into his perception of the real world until Mr. Bateman is entirely consumed by it, until he completely divorces from the world around him and takes up permanent residence in this fabricated reality. A reality where everything he does is of the utmost importance and the most supreme consequence. But just as quickly as he entered his fantasy world, did it come crashing down around him. His work, in all of its gory glory, has been erased. None of the drama that he has surrounded himself is present when he awakens from his dream. His magnum opus, his confession, is laughed off as a joke, and he isn't even recognized as the one that is telling it. And this breaks him. His pain is constant and sharp. His punishment eludes him, and this fact makes his existence that much more painful. Because in his mind, there is prestige in punishment. In his mind, Ted Bundy is the same thing as a table at Dorsia. Ed Gein is the same thing as the best business card. With the erasure of all the things that he has done, he is once again proven to be the worthless loser that he always was. All Patrick Bateman really is, all he will ever amount to in this world, are some drawings in a notebook and intrusive thoughts.